Asian hate during the pandemic is one of those things that absolutely rocks my nervous system. Like, nothing will get me more shaken up and also, like, depressed. See on the news, like, people within a community that you share kind of getting put down for no other reason.
My name is Alice. I was born in southern part of the China.
My name is Ben McChesney. I grew up mostly in Morgantown. I was actually born in Seoul, South Korea, and then I was adopted.
Malin Sadler, I was adopted when I was 2. I'm actually from Lincoln County, West Virginia, which is 30 minutes south of Charleston.
My name's Tess, and I'm from West Virginia. I was actually adopted from China, so my parents are both white American, and I grew up in West Virginia in a very small community that is mostly made of of white people. It was kind of interesting to like be both Asian and American and like Asian American. So it was like almost like I didn't realize I was Asian until I got older. It's kind of sad to say, but like I realized it because people would point it out. They always say things like racist, like, you know, about the eyes, about being Chinese and all that stuff. So like I think that would be like my culture shock as a child, at least, because it kind of made me think like, oh wait, I'm not the same technically as everyone. I'm like different, you know? And then it almost like made me shy away from being proud to be Asian.
I think growing up in Appalachia in my early developmental years really made me like kind of hate my own race. I connect with Appalachian people really easily because I've grown up in it. I understand like these issues of poverty, opioids, all this stuff because it's been around me for so long. I think when you balance that in with like being Asian American and just like American in general, it's like a really weird tightrope. It's a community that I really understand, but at the same time, they don't understand me fully.
I've always been like the token Asian guy of like my grade or whatever. I don't think I've ever been in school where there's been another Asian person like in the same like grade as me.
As a child, felt so ashamed to be Chinese American. Didn't want to learn the language even though I had someone offering it to me. Didn't want to partake in anything cultural because it's like you feel shame. There's no other way to feel, and that I've only been taught to be ashamed of it, nothing else. It is incredibly lonely because there's no one to talk to about like these issues. It's like intersectionality doesn't exist in these moments because there's no one else experiencing like that to its full degree. So I can, like I said, I can talk to people about these different topics, but they'll never, ever overlap. So it does get extremely lonely to be a part of all these communities, but also not.
Our daughter is 14 years old now. So we're tracking back to her just in her late elementary school life. My wife wanted to go teach abroad for a year. She's a public middle school teacher. So we picked up and went to China, and she taught at an international school in China. It was just 1 year, 11 months. When we were there, we were received in a way that was so overwhelmingly it was just incredibly nice and incredibly respectful, incredibly helpful, and incredibly, maybe the thing that I want my daughter to get is the inquisitiveness of it. Everyone wanted to know about us and ask questions. We, particularly me, but certainly my wife and my daughter too, always have taken that receptiveness and we try and employ it in our lives. If there's a weakness in any of this for the white guy on the street, it's that there doesn't seem to be a very big conversation about how you go about dealing with it, fixing it. I guess what I'd like to know more is the other side of the equation. How much is the average Asian person feeling it? Maybe even compared with something American issue, like Americans have a pretty good idea about where Black people are, how much they're feeling it now with Black Lives Matter, but how much is the Asian, how long has it gone on? How much does it inhibit their lives?
I wouldn't say I ever experienced bullying, but there's a difference between saying stuff and like actually respecting someone else's autonomy.
I do remember being in like elementary school and kids would like talk about my eyes and stuff, doing like the obvious like slanting their eyes and stuff like that. And I just remember like wanting, like hearing about like the double eyelid plastic surgery, and like as a kid I like wanted that, which was like ridiculous to think back on, because like I shouldn't want that, you know, at like 12 years old. And I also know like I'd get comments, like terrible comments. Like once my dog passed away in middle school, and I remember a kid the next day literally asked me like if I ate my dog. I think what's hard though is for like a lot of Asian Americans growing up in these areas that aren't as diverse, is we kind of just take it, because I know like it hurt me, but I also know I didn't do anything about it at the time. I just kind of like almost brushed it off, because I felt like being the minority, I had to just like let it happen, you know?
First day on campus, walking to class, someone goes, "There's so many chinks on campus." And I go, and I'm terrified. I'm not gonna say anything to this like 6-foot scary white man. So I just go to class and have my first day completely ruined. With the entirety of like COVID and stuff, we've the idea of like a target, even if it is not like hate crimes specifically, it's opened up this like slight door to like let these side comments come back through after I feel like a significant amount of work has gone into stopping them. Now we're no longer all the people that are actually trying to help society. We're like a virus that you should stay away from. And I remember when like the initial stages of COVID were happening, I only lived with like at-risk people, so I do the grocery shopping. No one wanted to be in an aisle with me. If I walked down an aisle, I felt like people would leave that aisle. And sure, you can make the case, well, no one wants to be around each other, but also at the same time, there are just certain things you just know.
My friend's mom actually reached out to me on Instagram. She messaged me over the recent rise in Asian hate crimes, and she just reminded me that I am like loved here in my hometown, and that I'm appreciated, and she wants me to feel safe, and she's like always looking out for me.
Working at the restaurant during the pandemic, when the first pandemic was started, a lot of people are definitely scared, because most of people didn't know what COVID-19 about. The virus is kind of new. A lot of people believe that it's actually from China. So that's when they first actually discovered that virus. So I would say like a lot of people put the hates toward to the Asian because of that. And I don't think it's fair. That definitely affect the Asian restaurants business. Being Asian, it does have certain amount of limit. In the past, I did looking for the job in the restaurant of the people American owned. They will give you the application form, but they wouldn't exactly give you a job, just by the way they look at you, the way their facial expression. I guess you can kind of could tell. The way I get to know they actually need someone as a server, because a family friend of mine is white. Ask them if they need a server. They need server desperately, but they're not willing to give me the job as a server.
I think I ask myself every time I get some type of opportunity in life, I go, am I getting this just because I'm not white and this is the race that you're most comfortable with? Like, that's what that makes me think of a lot of time.
People will probably always think in stereotypes when they see other people, just because it's what society has engraved in our minds. But that's just your first thoughts. It's what you do with those thoughts that like matters. So like, yes, you might see an Asian person and think some negative stereotypes, but that's just because that's like what society has shown you on like comedy, TV and stuff. It's how you treat them. Like, they're not any different, you know, they're not those stereotypes.
By saying these like things of like, oh, well, Asians make up the 1%, or we're like so smart or whatever, you're first off putting pressure on this group already to keep up with those standards. Like, I've had significant breakdowns being like, I'm just not an straight A student. What am I doing? Or like issues like that. And then at the same time, actively using us as a pawn against other groups. Like, we are used as an argument to say, well, this group did it, so why can't these other groups that have it's like significant systematic issues pressing against them. Why can't they do it? It's stuff like that, and it makes me not irrational, it makes me mad.
Obviously, the things that are happening to Asian Americans are objectively wrong. And like, they're not excusable in any like way, shape, or form. They're like, you know, reprehensible actions that are having like physical outcomes on people. But I think the thing is like, it is important to contextualize and realize that focusing on the individual, I think that's a very like American ethos like thing to do, like push the responsibility onto the individual instead of recognizing that there's societal issues, and that's what it only makes it worse.
A lot of Asian doesn't get as much media attention. I think that a lot of Asian not really into like, you know, get in the groups of protect their right, but they definitely should gather together.
I think conversations about the Asian American community is important right now. It's like an amplified moment to where the world's spotlight is kind of shown in for a second, and it is, I think, so important for us to take that momentum and keep pushing it through. Not just because it's helping the Asian American community, but also this is like one of those things where it's like, this is something we have to get out of the way so that future generations can take the torch and keep going. But if we stop now, what are we doing? Or are we just trying to keep like these marginalized groups down?